and Miss Jessie, and I will let her introduce themselves and their experience. Like I said, please stay muted. And don't make me mute you. I'm like Ellen on this. I'll mute you myself. And if you have any questions, I don't know if you guys can do the hand raising or if you try and do one of the little emojis and say that you have a question, but I will open up the forum for open questions later on too. So let's get started. Ms. Vanita, would you like to go first and introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I am Vanita Nevis, and I'm coming to you from several different ways in the faith-based community. I belong to a church called Hedge Around You Outreach Ministries, to which I am the church secretary, the hospitality secretary, the head usher, and various seats I hold in that church. But I also work for an organization called ARCH, Accompanying Returning Citizens with Hope. This program was founded in 2017 by the Catholic Diocese in St. Vincent de Paul. It is my responsibility to go into the parishes and help them to either start a prison ministry, enhance their prison ministry, and whatever programs they're looking to that will bring them into working with people who are coming in, out of incarceration or still incarceration. What else? Let me see, there's so much. One of the things I do with ARCH is we have a program called LEAF, Listening, Encouraging, and Assisting the Families of the Incarcerated. So that's a support program for those family members who are struggling with their person being incarcerated, struggling with how to deal with day-to-day life, to explaining to people why my family member is not with me anymore. So I helped to start that program. We are now partnering with United Methodist Church. They have something called Hope Letters. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Hope Letters. We just got approved to do Hope Letters at the Women's Prison, ORW, and at Noble. And we just got a parish that has stepped up to do the Hope Letters, and it's called St. Cecilia's. So that's another program that I'm working with them to help them with that. That's enough about me for right now.
That was definitely very thorough, and you have an amazing background. Miss Jessie?
My name is Jessie Roark, and I am a member of St. Mark's United Methodist Church. And through that membership, I became the director of the St. Mark's United Methodist Church Resource Center. And with that is a food pantry, a free store. We have a prison ministry. We're part of the All-In Community Prison Ministry. We are part of the Hope Letters. So we are writing to Dayton Correctional. And we've been receiving our letters back, and it's a really great ministry. I also am the president of an organization here in Lima called LANCIP, or Lima Allen County Neighborhoods in Partnership. And that is a community development organization. And part of what that is, without neighborhoods, you don't have a community. And we're about going into our neighborhoods and working with through advocacy and neighborhood programs on quality of life, safety, education programs. So between what I do here at the church and with that and merging it together, it was just a great fit of a way to be able to help my clients even further. So, and then my background is I am a recovering addict who has a history of learning the criminal justice system and the welfare system at the hands of, I want to say, tragedy in my life, and have, by the grace of God, been able to pull my life around and become a self-sustainable, productive member of society. And I want to help others do that. So that's enough about me, and that's where I come from, and that's how I've gotten into this position. So.
And kudos to you. That's an amazing story, Jessie. And be proud, take pride in everything that you've done, because that's a good job. That's amazing. So I guess I'm going to start with Vanita. And so our first question is, in this space, responding to the pandemic, there really was just no option to sit back and wait. So can you kind of walk us through, how you quickly pivoted and how, you responded and what your journey has been up until now?
So when the city closed down, when Columbus closed down, Ohio closed down, and they were releasing people out of incarceration, it was like, what do we do?
Mhm.
You're told, I'm not supposed to pick them up. I'm not supposed to be in contact with them. But guess what? I have a great God. I have a great God. I still went and picked people up from the bus stops, even if I had to put them in the back seat of my car. I could not let this pandemic close down what the needs were for them. We were grateful because places like Join closed down, and that's where they would get their IDs, vouchers, they would get their birth certificate vouchers. St. Vincent de Paul's free clothing store shut down. So people were coming out of incarceration with no clothing, no toiletries. I couldn't let that stop me. We were fortunate. St. Vincent de Paul had just opened up a thrift store in February, and they had to shut down. And they donated bags and bags and bags and bags and bags of clothes. And this particular church in Guyana opened up their doors to us and allowed us to use one of their rooms to house the clothes. So when someone got out, I was able to give them some clothing. I also had people donate. Right now in my garage, I've got boxes and boxes and boxes of toiletries. So I was able to still give them toiletries. The only thing that was hindering me was now they could no longer get their birth certificates. They couldn't go to the DMV and get their IDs. They couldn't get their social security cards. That was the worst part of it for me, was that I wasn't able to, as soon as they get out, was to get those IDs for them. But for me, it has been busier for me during the pandemic because there's so many people that are getting early release. I've got people who were getting out. I have one guy I'm working with now. I'm so proud of him. He had to sleep 2 days in the streets because he had nowhere to go while he was incarcerated. His family died. But through the grace of God, he's in the shelter. He volunteers at my church. I've been able to give him food. So I haven't really stopped. I've been more busier than I was prior to the pandemic.
Outstanding. That's probably a visual that a lot of people didn't think about. They thought about all these people getting out of prison, but they didn't think about all that they need in order to function and actually be safe, right? So I mean, it's amazing that you stepped up. It's people like you that make the world go round. So thank you so much for that. Jessie, same question.
So for us, it was the similar situation. We didn't have as many as returned citizens, but those who were already out, who were becoming jobless. They hadn't worked enough hours. They didn't qualify for unemployment. They still couldn't find jobs because at this point, people are laying off. So how are we going to find them jobs? They were relying on our food pantries in our community that are now being closed down. We were one of the few food pantries, and I want to say, I think we were the only one other than our main food bank that remained open through the whole pandemic. Now, we lost the majority of our volunteers because some of our volunteers, we partner with Allen County Job and Family Services. So the workers would have a place to come and work off their assistance. So as soon as the pandemic hit, they stopped sending their workers. So that was like a big majority of our volunteers. So that put extra work on us, those of us that are here every day. Elderly that would volunteer, they stopped volunteering because of the scare. Then we have a lot of clients with mental health issues who were scared to come out. We had to adjust on finding ways to get the shut-ins food. How do you deliver to shut-ins when you don't normally have a delivery process? It became more busy. I mean, I worked more hours and more time in that at that point, and we're still doing it because even though it seemed like it's let up a little bit, people still are scared. People are still not coming out yet. So it's still a long journey. Job and Family Services have not started sending their workers back out yet. And we're still seeing citizens being released, and they still are unable. Yes, things are open that they can go get things, but jobs still aren't. We're just not getting the help they need. People are still scared that they're coming out with the virus, so they're not wanting to accept them in. Housing has been an issue. We've had to put them up in hotels. You just, it's been quite a learning experience and an adjustment. You just have to be able to adjust every day. And you can't wait, just do it.
So Marcie, I want to piggyback on what Lisa just said. I also been putting people up in hotels. We were fortunate that a hotel contacted us saying, I want to help because people are going to become homeless. And they gave us this wonderful discount. And I've been placing people up in hotels since the pandemic closed down. I have a gentleman right now who's living in his car. The worst ones hit are sex offenders because they can't go into the shelters. And they're hard for them to get jobs as it is. And I have this one gentleman right now who's been living in his car since the pandemic. He is working, but he can't go to a shelter, but I did put him up in a hotel for a little bit of time. So we're doing that as well. In my church, my pastor said, you know what, I need to open up. And we have a pantry, and our pantry's open every Saturday. And we've been fortunate to be able to hand out food to people as well. So the same with you, we've been doing that too.
Which actually brings me just more on that. Have there been any unique partnerships that have helped you? Because I mean, that's a huge expenditure. I know here locally, I'm with United Way of Greater Cincinnati, and we actually gave funding to our local homeless shelter, and all of our displaced and transient individuals are still in hotels, as well as our domestic violence shelter. And I know that we help to fund that, and it's not cheap. So have there been any amazing partners or anybody that stepped up to help you accomplish these amazing feats?
United Methodist Church. There is a church here called the Church for All People, and they are a church that provides free clothing. And right across the street from them, they have a food pantry. Right next to them, they have a bicycle shop to where they give bicycles. And we have this amazing relationship with a pastor named Reverend Ernest Starr. And Reverend Starr has stepped up and provided hotel stays. He has stepped up and helped when it came to people getting their IDs. When it opened up, he pays for IDs. Mike Daniels, who is the director of the Franklin County Justice and Policy Office, he has stepped up as well, and his office has provided rapid rehousing, paying for people to get into rapid rehousing. Yeah, I have those two right now. They have helped.
We, the United Methodist Church obviously has stepped up and helped. We got a grant through the West Ohio Food Bank. United Way helped us with PPE to stay open, things like masks. We've had donations through the community, but other than that, and she mentioned the Church for All People, and they are actually, I got to visit that church one time, and they are actually what inspired me for our resource center. We have a free clothing store here. We have our food pantry, and we also have a bike ministry as well to provide transportation for returned citizens. And so yeah, I got to visit that church, and that is very inspiring. We also do a produce giveaway every Thursday, handing out fresh produce, and anybody can come to that as well. And so yeah, just general in the community, and any opportunities that we see out there, we apply for.
That's great. Yeah, I know, just I personally, I think, you know, obviously we saw restaurants and businesses get hit first. And I think that this second wave is going to directly impact nonprofits and, you know, the social service work that people do, that churches do. I think that second wave is coming, and we're going to start seeing, you know, a lot of things that are funded through donations, especially financial giving, is going to be that second wave that hits a lot of people that do the good work, that aren't necessarily making money off of it, right? So, which brings me to my next question. You know, how have you seen families? You know, do you think that things are changing? Is it crescendoing? Have you seen needs change for families throughout this, from the start to the now? I mean, it's been 7 months. Like, that's it's kind of a gap. Are we seeing changes? Jessie, go ahead.
I've seen an increase in need. And I don't know if maybe it's people just didn't know. At first, I thought maybe people didn't know we were still open.
Mm-hmm.
But my numbers are still increasing. The need is still increasing. I think as unemployment starts to drop off, as people start to use up all of their unemployment, we hear that there are jobs, you know, out there, but for some odd reason, I don't know if it's daycare, I don't know what it is that they're not in these jobs, but people are starting to max out on their benefits. And so they're in more need. And my numbers just increase weekly. And I see it. They did a stimulus check and they thought that was gonna, you know, solve this big issue for everybody, but I didn't see where it helped. I still have the same amount, if not more, of people needing help with utilities and rent and, you know, and I don't know, maybe mismanagement or whatever it was that caused it, but I see the need just still increasing. And now as we come upon the holiday season and the winter season, I don't see it getting any lighter.
Yeah. Vanita, what have you seen? Do you see an increase, or have you seen things kind of tailor off?
From my perspective, I've seen things kind of tailor off. When the initial rush came in, I got a lot of families who, again, I had to put up in hotels because they now became homeless because they no longer had a job, or they just didn't have any income coming in and their landlords just put them out. But I haven't had a large influx of people coming to me now for that need. The biggest need I see is food. A lot of people calling me for food. And again, my church has a pantry and we're open every Saturday. And it's one of those pantries that you don't have to give us your zip code, not zip code. And really don't encourage your ID. We just feel if you need the food and you came out, we give it to you. We do box our food up and, you know, you come outside, we don't allow you into the church. But that's been the biggest one. That and don't laugh, toilet paper.
Oh, yeah.
So we keep a supply of toilet paper. It's a real big need for toilet paper.
Yeah. In your community, other than, I mean, do you guys, I can speak for mine, and I serve Claremont and Brown County in Ohio with United Way. And our churches have been amazing. We have a system of about 7 churches that function under the heading of Mercy Works. So they all have local pantries, and they're all stationed in different communities throughout our county. And then our local pantry, IPM, has actually done 4x4 mobile pantries. So all throughout the summer, at a different school location in a different community, mostly our food desert communities, they actually did drive-through pantries. So set up 240 boxes. We have another one coming up this weekend with IPM partnering with one of our largest businesses in his parking lot. He's allowing a mobile pantry to come through, and he's providing hot meals. So I would be interested to know, you know, have you guys had some relationships that are gap fillers? Have you made some unique partnerships throughout this?
I have, some of the people that I assisted that came out of incarceration, some of the gentlemen that are now either in a shelter or found some place to stay, they have been volunteering every Saturday at my church to help us to box up the boxes and distribute the food. So I have been blessed with that. I'm just so grateful that they want to give back. So I've seen that.
We've seen some really great things here in the Lima Allen County area to where we have the West Ohio Food Bank is actually located right here in Lima. And so we were blessed with the Army National Guard. We're here. Thank you. And then we have it's called Neighborhood Relief, and it's Neighborhood Relief Ministries. And so between them and St. Mark's West Ohio Food Bank, we have been doing like food distributions every week. And then the National Guard and the West Ohio Food Bank has been going to the outer counties. And then we've been kind of doing Allen County just in different locations throughout the week. So between Neighborhood Relief and West St. Mark's, we would go to different locations throughout Allen County and and Neighborhood Relief would provide lunch then at those distributions as well. So some really great food, and they were all drive-throughs, some really great food distribution opportunities. So, but those are starting to die off as the National Guard are starting to go back home. And still volunteers are still leery about coming back.
Yeah. Can I just piggyback on that? One of the things that I have seen was, like she said, I lost a lot of volunteers because the majority of my volunteers were senior citizens. And that was the biggest help, was that the senior citizens were stepping up, they were helping, they were picking people up, they would help so much, but now they're just that fearful of getting in contact, and I've lost a lot of volunteers through this. So it's wonderful that these young men and women who are younger, who are coming out of incarceration, have stepped up and say, we will help you. We need to give back. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, yeah.
And those young ones coming back and getting them volunteering, and we see that as well. That's one of the great things I like to, when I pick them up and introduce them to the good people around them. And I like to say, hey, you know, we do these food distributions and this and that, and I know you don't have anything to do while you're waiting around. Why don't you come hang out with us and just spend the day with us? And what I've noticed is not only do they feel better about themselves when they leave that day, but you're starting to build that relationship as they hang out with you and those around you. And then it's some younger volunteers and they get to see this group of people. So Vanita, I just agree with you that is one of the best things we can do, is get them back involved with us at the, you know, as soon as they're wanting to do it. Great people to keep them around.
The great part about that is that this is all faith-based, that, you know, we may save the soul. One of the gentlemen I was telling you about, he's came to 2 of our services, and he wrote in our card last week, he wanted to become a member. And because my church is so small, my pastor knows everybody. And we had Women's Day the first time he came to the service. And I'm in the kitchen doing food, because we were having food afterward. And I hear her call his name out. You should have told his face that my pastor, he knows me. You know, she recognized me. Well, you've been coming and volunteering.
Right.
You know, she is. She's standing next to you. So it also is an opportunity to get new members in your church, get people reactivated with God, you know, so it's a great win-win.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. You know, honestly, I think you just made a light bulb go off in my head. Like, I was thinking of some of the local churches that I work with, and I'm thinking, you know, they really like this work. They just don't know how to get involved. And a first step would really be, you know, allowing them to come in and volunteer and put forth that community effort. So thank you, Vanita. I think you just gave me an idea to talk to some of my locals, and put a little light bulb over their head, right? So I think that's a great idea, and I love the fact that, you know, your church and your soul has stepped in to do that work. So that's great, and you guys involving, you know, our returning citizens into the community is it's a beautiful thing. It really is. Well, that kind of brings the next question, because as you've continued on your response and as you've been, shifting and pivoting, can you identify something that's really worked well? And I know you just said the volunteers coming in worked well, but what hasn't worked? Do you have something that you kind of like, let's try this, and then it just maybe fizzled, or it just didn't get the response that you expected it to? And Jessie or Vanita, you can take it. Only three of us.
Look at us both, Jessie. We're like, everything has worked. How about you, Jessie? I mean, we had to think out of the box, and thinking out of the box for everything we've done, I feel that I've still met the needs.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't seen anything that hasn't worked. Look at Jessie. We're like,
Not really. I mean, no, we just had to be imaginative and, quick thinking. And of course, you had to check the guidelines every day to make sure you were being right on there to what the government wanted you to do for that day, because it seemed like some days you couldn't keep up. Some days it seemed like they changed by the hour. It was, I can kind of remember like I had turned on and it was like everything was in China, and then bam, everything was closing down here. It was just like that quick. But I can't think of anything that didn't actually accomplish what we were trying to do. I mean, we might have had some hiccups along the way that we was like, oh, got to change that. But I can't think of anything that wasn't just like a minor adjustment that didn't work.
I think that the worst for me was once someone got out of incarceration, the three things that we look to get them is their ID, their Social Security, and the birth certificate. Now with Join closed down, St. Vincent de Paul closed down to where they could get those vouchers. That was the hardest barrier, because the grateful thing is they come out of prison with this ID that a lot of organizations were now accepting in lieu of the IDs. And the other barrier we had to get around was, so that Ohio implemented that you can't just walk into the BMV and get your IDs anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be mailed to you.
Mm-hmm.
So now I am with people who are homeless, coming out of incarceration, living in shelters, and may not have a mailing address, to where otherwise churches would allow them to use their mailing address to get their IDs and get their mail there. That was the biggest barrier, was the ID.
Mm-hmm.
And then Social Security closed down, and we got people who were coming out of incarceration that might be the age to get Social Security or disabled, now had a barrier because they couldn't go online to apply for their for their Social Security. Those were my biggest barriers, was getting them their IDs.
I would agree. The DMVs were closed. Once everything started opening back up, that was a blessing, but that was the biggest barrier. But in our issue, we just didn't care. If you didn't have an ID, we served you anyways. You were who you said you were. I had to take your word for it until somebody proved me otherwise. But I wasn't going to deny you services because you couldn't get to the DMV.
Yes.
No, that makes. I did find that to be a bit of a blessing as well. I think somebody out there had said, we need to lift, some of these rules and regulations. I know that our local pantry that usually required an ID, zip code, all that stuff. They were coming through and they were saying, I'm picking up for 4 families. They're like, okay, where do y'all live? Okay, here you go. 4 boxes, and some produce to go with it, and some power packs for the kiddos, and no questions asked, just keep on moving through. So I think that was probably one of the more helpful things that I saw, that some of those regulations were lightened a little bit.
There were a lot on our end. We just said, you need food? Okay, here you go. They just had to do it.
Yep. Yeah, why do you not?
I had to sleep at night.
I know.
Yes.
I hear you. I mean, You know, overwhelmingly, I've noticed because I was just on filling the gaps yesterday. I was on their panel, and that same question was posed to us: what worked and what didn't. Um, and we were all sitting there going, "No, we had great ideas, and you know what? They all worked." you know,
Yeah.
so it's again, it's beautiful to see some game changers out there doing what's needed and doing what's right. So kudos to you guys. Um, so. And that's kind of going into the next question. We've talked about your guys' collaborative energies. If Did you see any collaborations fall apart, do you think, or did they just get stronger?
We lost a lot of collaborations because of the fact that we could not go into buildings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you people know about the First Step Friday that we had here in Columbus, and it was housed at the Jobs and Family Services building.
Amazing.
And with job, I have someone sitting here, and she said it's amazing.
Amazing.
So First Step Friday was a one-stop shop that happened the first Friday of every month. So returning citizens who otherwise did not have transportation to get to the VMV, to get to Social Security, to get to Jobs and Family Services, to get to all of those reentry organizations that they needed to get back into the community, we were housed in one building. It was such a phenomenal experience. We would have everything they needed in here, and they got everything, child support, everything was in this building. And when the city shut down, that was one that was so vital that we lost. And we still have not been able to pick that back up. So maneuvering around those agencies now for someone is a little bit harder, to whereas we could just say, oh, just come to First Step Friday and we'll take care of it all right there. So that resources, those resources that maneuvering around how they work now.
Mm-hmm.
We lost some, again, just like she stated, resources, collaborations, things like some NAs, some AA meetings, some STEPS meetings, some groups that would mental health help, that would meet and help individuals. Stopped meeting. They couldn't get in the buildings, and some of them did not pick back up. Grief counseling, just different things that helped. I felt really helped. The self-support groups, and some other like programming that like LACNIP was putting on, some starter programs, what I call starter programs or beginner programs, like our beginner gardening programs and things that would normally be offered to the community that we couldn't offer this year. So there was a lot of things that just couldn't be done. We put on a lot of events for the community that are usually free events. And at these events, we have a lot of organizations that are there that offer assistance to the community. And again, they weren't able to set up and have those events, so nobody was there to show what they had to offer. So again, things that just couldn't be done.
In the loss of those meetings and some of those mental health services, did either of you guys have people reach out to you, like partners that said, and that's my, I guess, like your local mental health board or some of your recovery services that said, hey, I know that you're still serving this population. How can we help you? Was there any of that?
Not on my end.
Mine's either.
I heard that mental health was an increase. There was an increase in mental health, but by all means there would be, going through the pandemic, a lot more overdoses, a lot more suicides,
Yes.
as we have went through this. And it did surprise me that there was no outreach from the mental health community to say, how can we help? There was none.
The only agency that I know of that helped with mental health, domestic violence, here in Columbus was called African Central Professional Development Shop, APDS. They refused to close down. And my daughter works there. and they never closed down. She said, we can't close down. We have to be here. Like she said, people are in need of these services, you know. Unfortunately, I just spoke to my daughter this morning. One of the employees was tested positive.
Oh.
And they made it all the way through. And she just texted me. I said, I heard you're in quarantine. She said, yes, Mom, I'm working from home. But they were adamant about keeping their doors open throughout. And for the grace of God, they made it all the way up until October, September.
Just before flu season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's concerning to me, because I know locally here, our mental health agencies especially reached out, and they were at mobile pantries. They were offering telehealth services. They were trying to get they volunteered at our local food bank to help to figure out people needed additional assistance. Our senior services stepped up because we identified, you know, isolation as a huge issue. So that kind of hurts my heart that there was this gross need, and nobody reached out to say, hey, we know that they're going to be here, right? We know you're going to get them. We know you're going to see them. You know, how can we help you meet that additional need? Not just the basic needs of food, shelter, clothing, but that additional health need, right? So I'm sorry for that, guys. That's concerning to me. That to me doesn't scream, you know, real collaboration and partnership. Sometimes you got to meet people where they're at, and it's not always where they're coming in your front door. So that's unfortunate. Well, I have just one more question, then I definitely want to open it up to the group to see if they have some questions for your wisdom. But is there what we just talked about? Do you see new opportunities emerging to meet some of these needs and fill some of these gaps? Do you have a plan in place? I mean, you guys have both identified some real health concerns: isolation, suicide, addiction. Do you have an idea of how to bring some people to the table to try and relieve some of that you've seen?
I believe this conference will do that. I have promoted this conference in making people aware. I had a gentleman who is the president of St. Vincent de Paul, one of the parishes, who reached out to me because his family member's coming out of prison and he didn't know what to do. And then he said, but before we get started, our men's ministry needs to do something. Hope letters. We need men for hope letters. We've got people incarcerated who are not getting letters, who have no family members, who need to hear from the faith-based community. They need to hear from us. So our new opportunity is that we're going to have a group of men writing through the hope letters through United Methodist Church. So I'm very excited about that collaboration with them.
Yeah, you make a completely, you know, unfortunately it's one of those things, out of sight, out of mind, but you make I think it's, you know, United Way just did let me think of it. We did letters for seniors because we know that they've been isolated and shut in, and you know, we had preschoolers drawing pictures and sending them out there, you know, and I just know it would make my day if I got a letter from a preschooler. I mean, you know, or a kindergartner or a first grader. How can you not smile? So I think just overwhelmingly that isolation that we don't see because it's not directly in our community. Hope Letters is definitely an impactful program that I think will improve mental health while these folks are in a place where they can't necessarily be around and touch other people and have that connection. So kudos to you to get some gentlemen to step up and write some letters. I mean, we know. Hopefully they're legible. They can type. Jessie, what did you see? What are some ideas that you have going forward to opportunities for emerging ideas and collaborations?
Well, I have a whole plan that I have written that I'm working on that I want to introduce. I found a whole building and everything that I think would be amazing here in Lima, Allen County. But I've also written down, I have a list of things that I feel could happen in our community to better serve our returning citizens and those who are impacted by incarceration. We have a lot of families that I serve who are missing a family member. Mothers, fathers are missing.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are even mother and father, and grandma's got the babies. And it's all too common in our community, and there need to be services. So I've recognized some things that could help with those impacted by incarceration. So not necessarily our returned citizens,
Mm-hmm.
but children who are lacking the phone calls with the dads or the moms, because there is nothing but a cell phone in the home. So we're not getting the face-to-face video chats with our parents that I feel that as some faith-based organizations, maybe we can take care of some of that. You know, maybe come in, we've got a laptop, we've got a way for you to have a video chat with your parent, some things like that. But I also, one of the things I want to implement is some mental health first aid classes here at our church, as well as youth mental health first aid. We've had a lot of suicide in our community very recently. And if the mental health community is not going to step out, then our faith community needs to step out. And I have to take that to our board, of course, but one's too many. And I know the stigma behind it and why people don't want to talk about it. But okay, so if we're not going to talk about it, let's talk about the signs and symptoms so you can recognize it in your children. Because this pandemic has been hard on our children, and I don't think people have realized it. And I don't think that they have necessarily taken it as serious as it is. We have taken our kids' outlets from them. And when we are dealing with children who are already impacted by the fact that a parent is incarcerated, and now we have taken their out away. And yes, they've allowed some of them to get back to sports, but every week here in Allen County, we're hearing this football team's not playing this week. This team's not playing no more. Their season is stopped. So we have taken the way that these children deal with their feelings and their frustration that their father is out of the home or their mother is not in the home, and we've taken it away from them. These kids aren't having the interaction they need at school with the other children because they're social distancing. I mean, I don't know if anybody's paid attention to how their kids are sitting at lunch. Or, yes, we're doing virtual, so we're not having the interaction that our kids need just to be kids. And so they're home and they're dealing with these issues. I've got children that are coming to my pantry to get food for their homes because mom is at work or dad's at work and the other parent's out of the home. We have to do something. And so those are some of the things that I've really noticed, that we need to take interest in what's really happening in the mental health of our children, because these are the children that are going to grow up, and these are the ones that are going to end up behind our walls if we don't do something. And yes, I want to help with those who are returning, but I want to stop the ones from going as well, because we can't stop the problem if we don't attack it from all directions, right? So
it takes a village.
Yes. And I believe we have to attack it in all directions, because if we don't start at the children, at some point we're not going to stop the cycle.
You're not.
And I see cycles where I come from and what I see here. I'm seeing generational cycles.
Yep.
And we've got to find the reason, build the relationship with this family to find how we can break this cycle.
Yeah.
And it really is about relationship building. because nobody comes into your office or the first time you meet them and tells you what it is that keeps them in this cycle. You got to build that relationship, and that comes out over time, and it comes with breaking down tearing off each brick by brick, and just building that relationship, and eventually it comes out, and eventually you can, work on each step.
Yeah. No, you're think you're speaking directly to my heart, Jessie. Because part of the reason that I actually really got interested and I got involved with REBA was I worked in Warren County, and I was part of the Butler Warren Reentry Coalition. And then Reba and I met when we were on the family group, how to work with impacted families together. And then my eyes even opened up wider. I did some work with Warren County Head Start. And actually on their admission form, there is a question if you have an incarcerated family member. 35% of their kiddos check that box.
Wow. That's sad.
So you're talking 35% of their kiddos in Head Start. And you're talking, I mean, it's over 300 kids, right? I get it. But that's a
lot.
Right? And that was the very first question in my head, Jessie. It's like, what are we doing? How are we addressing this? Because we know it's an ACE. We know that having an incarcerated family member is one of those trauma triggers. We know that it impacts kids' brains, development, how they experience it. And you keep doing what you're doing because it's needed. There needs to be that wraparound of services, exactly like you said, Vanita. It takes a village. And I'm kind of a believer that we need to start honing our own village because it's not getting focus anywhere up here. So that trickle down effect is not going to happen for a long time. The same way it didn't with the pandemic, right? So we got to be proactive and start honing our own village, which is a lot of what you guys are doing.
Well, I can vouch from experience that when somebody is incarcerated, serving time, the family is serving time.
Amen. Say it again. Say it again.
The family is serving time. Whether you believe it or know it, I can tell you for a fact it's true. And it may not be under the same rules or regulations, but the family is serving time. And them children are serving time.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It just is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so somebody's got to address that.
Mm-hmm.
We may be out here into the city and doing our thing, but in the same time, we're serving time with our loved one behind them bars.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to do something. It's trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And it affects our children. They're not just bad kids.
Nope.
They're not just bad kids.
No such thing as a bad kid, just bad choices.
That's right. We got to show them better choices.
Yes.
We can't fault them for something that nobody has taught them better.
You can't know what you don't know.
Right. And if you don't know no better, you can't do better.
Right.
So, we just need to, from all directions, get it.
Like you said, get out of those silos, ladies. We sometimes hold government office over here, nonprofits over there, faith-based over here. It ain't working.
No.
We got to get out of our silos. Somebody's got to step up, step in and say, we need you, we need you, we need you, we need you. And we all got to come together under a headline of It Takes a Village, right?
The village people.
The village
people.
I thought that was taken.
Yeah, maybe.
And I think, again, this conference that Reba has coordinated will bring that together. If you had a chance to look at some of the speakers that we're having, they come from each one of those entities that you just brought up.
Yes.
Yep.
Each one. We've got pastors, bishops, directors from DRC. We just got everyone coming together.
Yep. And now it's always what you do with it afterwards, right?
Yes.
Right.
What
Like
did you?
you just can't have, the pot of gold and sit on it at the end of the rainbow.
We had,
Share it.
did you sit in the circle yesterday? The circle that was supposed to be, have breakout groups, and we were supposed to go into, but we all facilitators were in the same room together. And that bishop who said his church doors being closed gave him the opportunity to go outside to the community and see. Did you remember him, Bishop? I forgot what his name was, but he was saying, had his church not closed, he would have stayed within inside his walls with his members. But this pandemic gave him an opportunity to now go out into the community. And what can this church do in the community? And I thought that just touched me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. You are completely right, Vanita. And on that note, I'd love to give everybody in this room the opportunity to ask our lovely ladies any question, share a story. If you're interested in one of the programs that Vanita talked about, because I really like LEAF, by the way. If you want a little bit more information, please do. Just unmute yourself, ask a question, and we'll figure it out as we get two people talking. Somebody's gonna have to be polite and wait. So. Pretty sure everybody can unmute themselves. Let me double check though. Anybody have a question?
I always feel if there's no question, we were thorough.
Very.
It just didn't dawn on them yet. They're waiting. And then they'll put it in the Whova app. You'll get a question later on. It'll like pop into their head later. You ever notice
That
that?
always happens.
Yes. You're like, oh, I should have asked that. And this great conference in that Whova app gives people the opportunity to go back and say, hey, I do have a question, right? If we were in person, you walk away and call it a day. You're like, don't get to ask.
I'm going into the Hoover app to see if anybody asked a question.
You're on it.
Somebody said, I am attempting to enter the 10:15, 11:30 a.m. faith-based approaches to closing the reentry basic needs gap. I don't know who asked that. I hope they got in.
There was a couple of those. I talked to Joe to see if he could help the people out. There was like 4 of those in there.
Oh, yeah, there is.
Mm-hmm.
There's 4 of them here. I see that. That's the only questions I see in there.
Yep. I don't see any others either.
Well, I can tell you, I have your guys' contact information. I'm sure your bios are up there and they're fabulous. So if anybody does have a question, they can obviously reach out to you directly.
Yes.
But I keep doing what you're doing. I love it when everybody comes together, and it sounds like you guys are reaching out and, touching where it needs to be touched and figuring out how to fill in the gaps. And that's what's needed during this time. And way to go, way to shift and pivot, ladies.
Thank
Doing
you.
amazing work.
Thank you.
It was nice meeting both of you. Jesse, keep it up. Good luck to you.
You
Marcie,
as well.
good luck to you. May God be on your side and continue to have a hedge of protection over you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too, Vanita. Does anybody want to close us in prayer?
I just said it.
Oh, was that what you?
No, that was the prayer.
It was wonderful. Reba said, we can either open in prayer or close in prayer, or we don't have to. And I want to put it out to you ladies, since that's kind of your jam. If you just did and you said, over us, that's fantastic too. We can call that your blessing.
Right.
We got the blessing of Vanita. What more do we need?
Thank
All
you
right,
very much.
Thank you. You guys enjoy the rest of the conference. It was such a pleasure to facilitate this, and I'm sure Reba will get some kicks out of it as she watches the recording, or whoever else does. Be like, I knew you put those 3 together. Oh, good.
Right.
Thank you.
Have a blessed day.
Have a blessed day. Health and happiness.
So let's see.